Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight and call to order tonight's Diversity Inclusion Task Force meeting for the town of Tiburon, and it is Wednesday, October 11th. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Nick Farr is absent. Councilmember and Chair Thier is absent. Councilmember Wellner is absent. Vice Mayor Fredericks
Here.
and Mayor Ryan.
Here.
And the at-large members, Karen Carrera is absent. Annette Harris.
Here.
Ruben Kalra.
Here.
Yushin Latour. Here. Tina Shaw Pike
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to start tonight's agenda with action item 1, and it is a discussion of the strategic plan. I don't know if the members of the subcommittee were going to give us a update and we could discuss. That would be great. Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and start and just remind everybody that at the last meeting, we agreed to put a process in place over the next 3 months. First month would be to talk about what target metrics to set for the 3 areas of town staffing, community engagement, and policing. Subsequently followed in the next 2 months with identifying which activities and proposing a budget. But for the focus on setting target goals, we have met as a committee and formulated some targets that we'd like to propose and discuss at the meeting here today. I will talk about the town staffing goal, where we took the data that was provided by the town manager's office, and we reviewed that data in comparison to the town of Tiburon demographics, as well as the county of Marin. And what we saw was that out of the 38 people on the town of Tiburon staff, 30% are underrepresented minorities, which is defined as 100% minus white alone, not Hispanic or Latino. So essentially Blacks, Asians, and Latinos, as well as other underrepresented race and ethnicity groups. And so our recommended target for 2025 over the 2-year period would be to maintain that level of diversity. And the reason for that is because it exceeds the percentage of underrepresented minorities in the town of Tiburon, which is 20%. And our aspirational benchmark is the demographic diversity for the county of Marin, from which we draw talent, and that number is 30% underrepresented minorities. So we've already achieved that underrepresented target. I would just add a couple of qualifiers to say that while there are a little bit of discrepancies between which type of minority, it doesn't necessarily match, if you will, exactly the communities that we're serving. And so if the town could keep an eye on that, we'd certainly appreciate it. And then a clarifying question that the subcommittee would like to propose, which is we want to confirm that that N of 38 would include the police department staff. We weren't sure of that.
The answer is yes. The current employee level of the town is probably actually a little less. We've had a few vacancies in the past couple months. But any number we give you includes all of the employees in the town, which includes the police department.
Terrific. So that's the first set of targets. I think we could probably, if we need to vote, save that for later, because we'd like to also review the community engagement and policing targets as well. And I will pass it over to Alice to talk about community engagement.
And so this is very short. We did have a discussion about identifying the ethnicity or race self-identified by the members of our boards and commission. It is not data that the town keeps. So there's a question of A, if we want to do that, and B, if the boards and commissions want to do that. In any case, an interesting part of the conversation with respect to any goals we have of increasing minority representation is how informational meetings on signing up and what the duties are provided. In the past, the neighborhood associations were almost a really good source of that kind of information from time to time as part of reports at their meetings, but they've become relatively inactive over the course of COVID. Another source could be the town sponsored neighborhood homeowner association summits, which we haven't had for a long time. And while I'm on that, I would just like to point out that there is a push. Even there are 2 kinds of neighborhood groups. Some of them are created under the HOAs, and they're often homeowners associations. Others are affinity groups that self-appoint, self-elect, and recruit, and those are neighborhood associations. They have a broader meaning, including the neighborhood associations has been used in the past. So when we talk about working together with them, we should remember we're not just talking about the homeowners associations created by CCNRs.
Thanks.
And I would just add, if we are going to track the percentage of town elected and appointed officials who are underrepresented minorities, we'd recommend a way to do that through self-ID. And then I think next, I believe Ruben, you were going to talk about the policing.
Yeah, just with regard to policing, Karen and I chatted, and this task force was created in response to policing action, and I heard from the chief that we now have a citizens advisory panel. I'm not sure when it's going to be announced, but in the spirit of collaboration, want to get Chief Gene's input as well as the CAP's input in terms of what metrics we should be tracking to assess our policing here in Tiburon. We've looked at a few things, and we've collaborated with some of the other groups in Marin who agree that it's always good to establish priority goals, assess the problem, like example here in Tiburon, depending on like what statistics you look at or what date range. I think in Tiburon we pull over approximately African Americans at 10 to like 12 times the rate of population. And the question is, why? Is it the car they're driving? Is it their ethnicity? Is it people calling because they're concerned? And I think it's important to sort of look at that, kind of like what Mill Valley's done, and just figure out what the source of the issue is, and then try to address it moving forward. But I think with the CAP now being selected, and with our new great chief, I think it'll be important to sort of set the priorities together rather than try to lead right now.
I might just add to clarify that in the absence of the ability to have met with Chief Gene previously, the report that we provided and the target metric we should ignore at this moment. Right now, the percentage of underrepresented minorities who are stopped in the town of Tiburon are 39% compared to 47% in the county of Marin. And the big question that Ruben is pointing to is, what should the 2025 target be, or is this even the right metric?
Thank you. And then, are there any more presentation from the subcommittee?
There isn't, but I'd like to make a comment when you're.
So I was going to open it up for public comment, and then we can discuss as a board. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to make a comment on this agenda item?
Seeing none.
Okay, so I'll close the general public comment period, and then we can now discuss as a board. So Councilmember, Board Member Fredericks, please.
This is not about a particular report. It's about a general concern and a question for our attorney. One of the concerns was how we frame our aspirations or goals so they don't fall under the prohibited quota method of trying to address diversity.
Yeah, so that is something I would have to look into in greater detail just because of the new Supreme Court case. So I can't have an answer. But we'll look into it and get back to you.
And it might
Keep
just
an eye
add,
on us, right?
What?
Sorry.
Excuse me, sorry.
go ahead. Okay, I might just add that the guidance that we give clients is to avoid anything that has to do with a target or a goal as opposed to an aspiration, which I think we'd probably have to modify the language here if you find it's consistent with your recommendations.
I have a quick comment. I'm that person who always wants to be assured that we have a measurable goal. And so when I hear that you'll look into it, and I thank you very much for doing that because I've sat on this subcommittee. Could you give us an idea? Will it be next month? Will it be, November, December? Will it be spring? Can you just give us a general idea?
Of course, at the next meeting, I'm sure we can, within a month. So unless you know, Greg and you guys have an alternative suggestion. But I think a month is good.
I'm not an attorney, but I might just chime in because I'm pretty well versed in the topic, which is basically the Supreme Court decision for Harvard and UNC affected only race-based decisions in colleges and universities. It had no implications for Title VII, which is what we're talking about in terms of the Civil Rights Act. However, there have been lawsuits that have been brought against law firms in particular, as well as several corporations now across industries in terms of reverse discrimination. And so the guidance that is being given broadly to corporates is to whatever extent possible, avoid targets or goals, especially when they're tied to executive compensation. And I don't think we're doing anything here that's tied to executive compensation, but the language that we're using, I think we should modify.
Thanks. And when you guys were looking into this, did you try to measure or think about how we can sort of make the same aspirational goals with respect to candidates who are looking for the jobs that we're interviewing for? Because I feel like that's the kind of the way you get in front of the court cases is by making the candidate pool where you choose from.
Yeah, and actually it's illegal to do that. So if there are two equally qualified candidates and one is a minority and one is not, you can't give the head nod to the minority. So
right. So that, but we need to recruit more minority candidates is what I want. No,
Yeah.
is what I'm kind of going towards. Did you try to figure out how to get us to measure that?
we could.
We could figure out how to measure it. Before we do that, we need to figure out how our recruiting, hiring and promotion will be done. And that's a section that Karen covered and did extensive research on. Maybe she'll report on it next time. It's in the report.
No, I would think that that's more of an initiative, but like right now, what we're trying to do is set the goal. And I think, Jack, what you might be proposing is setting the goal a little bit further before the outcome is what you're suggesting.
I was just more asking, but yeah, if it's a good idea, I'm suggesting it. If it's a bad idea, I'm asking. Is there any other board member discussion that we want to talk about?
I would like to propose putting the town staffing aspiration to achieve confirmation on, are we aligned on that? And can we move forward with that?
So before we talk about it, the way that the action item is phrased, are we supposed to be voting on anything or advancing anything by a vote today? Can you? It's an action item, but then it says discuss, so I'm always confused by that.
I think there is space in the agenda item to add the document that has been I'm not sure what you're calling it, Tina, the graph to the draft strategic plan. So I
Okay.
think the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. And so, Tina, you're asking or making a motion that we adopt this target goals document into the draft strategic plan? Is that what you're doing?
I will so move.
So this is just to adopt this information into the strategic plan. I will second that.
Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so that passes 5-1. Do you want to add?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that we would be voting on adoption. I just thought a report was being given today.
I think we're just voting to add it to the draft strategic plan, which has not been adopted.
Okay, to add it to the draft. Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't.
Then I'll change my vote to yes.
Okay, so that's approved, passes 6-0. Thanks. I'm glad I asked. So we'll move on to the second action item, which is the 2024 event requests. So is there an event team here that has a list of, or are we just going to compile a list of events that we're looking to do?
Yeah, I think we want to compile a list of events. And, you know, I think one of the things with regard not only to strategic plan, but is just planning in general is that it's great to be able to plan in advance rather than like a month. And, one of the things I want to request is to make a name for us. I think it's been a terrific celebration is Juneteenth. So I want to make at least approval for Juneteenth, just because a lot of, having done this for a few years, a lot of the vendors book up, and more advanced notice would be super helpful. And I'm like, the past few Juneteenths, I'm happy to be the champion. Haven't decided on the exact date, but just want to get support from the team here so I can start moving forward on planning that event, and just want to take it from the community if there's any other events folks want to lead.
I actually wanted to know if the Chamber of Commerce has officially, or the town officially decided on a number of street closures per year, because I know that was a big topic with chamber.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have the DITF 3 events that we can close the street for. Is that true?
Well,
2 events.
there are 3 slots for non-chamber sponsored
Okay.
events, whether they come from Diversity Task Force or somewhere else.
Okay.
But the council approved a total of 6 closures in a calendar year, 3 of which would be dedicated to the chamber ones.
So I don't know that we can do it tonight, but I would love to see, actually, before we discuss, do we have any other questions before, because I'm going to open up to public comment. Then we'll bring it back and discuss. Is there anyone, members of the public, who'd like to make a comment on this item?
Seeing none.
Okay, so I'll close the public comment period. So if possible, and I don't know that we can do it tonight, but it would be great to sort of get the list and rank them, and in a way that, like, we'd like these to be on Main Street, and then these, then the ones further down the list can be at Zielinski Park or somewhere else, or when we fill in the lagoon across from the fountain and make that our event space, right? But I don't know if we're prepared to do that, but I'd love to get a bigger list of all the events we want to undertake, or at least think about.
And
Jack, who
I
would-
would, sorry,
I'm sorry, who would evaluate that list of individuals?
I think it's a negotiation between ourselves, right?
Yeah, I mean,
but we're assuming that all 3 will come out of DITF, and.
well,
I just think
necessarily the case.
I just think we as a group should have a queue, and then, say, if we get a slot, if there's a slot
I
that
got
we
it.
need to compete for, this is our priority, this is our second priority, third priority, fourth priority.
and I think that's terrific. And I think, one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is that I want to get in that queue, and not to say, because I think this would be a great venue as well, just here by the library, but it'd be great if we all sort of brainstorm, ask, what's traditionally worked with the events is having a champion like myself and Matt for Juneteenth, and, Nushin and Tina for Diwali and Nowruz respectively. But if we can get the word out, and, we can maybe put something on next door to say, hey, for the next meeting, tell us what you're interested in, whether you're willing to be a champion, then we could have like a clear cut list and try to get to the top of the line before all those events get blocked out by someone else.
That's a great idea.
And another variable we need to think about is volunteers to help.
Yep.
Right.
I think part of the strategic planning process, we envision for our next meeting, actually having the community engagement subcommittee outline what it is they'd like to accomplish in the next year.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea too.
You want that too?
Yeah, Oh, okay. Join us.
Because the events traditionally still have to be presented to the regular city council
Mhm.
for approval. Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say, we have let another month go by without anything specific with regard to Hispanic heritage. And we've been told, some people thought for years it was May 5th, that date. It's not, it's an entire month. So I just want to go on the record and say that that should be included in whatever list is put together.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Do we have any other discussion, or do we want to move towards any?
So would this group then brainstorm during the community engagement subcommittee meeting and then come up with those?
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, so we can close that action item. And the discussion item D1, Chair asked that we continue that item to the next meeting. So we're going to do that and postpone until the next meeting. So the only thing we have left is public comment period, open public comment period time. Madam Clerk, do you want to give instructions as to how to participate?
If you're calling in on Zoom and would like to make a comment during this meeting, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom, which will indicate to me you would like to make a comment. You can find the raise hand button on your webinar controls bar on the bottom of your Zoom window or smartphone screen. If you're using Zoom, I invite you to turn your camera and microphone on. Please accept the request from the Zoom host that you're being promoted to a panelist. If you're calling and using a phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand.
Thank you. And then we'll start with people in the chambers. I know we have one person who wants to make a comment. Board Member Harris, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. I would like to put up for discussion purposes in the future, the concept of reconstituting the DI task force. And by reconstitution, I mean having the issue discussed of having it as a committee, as the other committees in Tiburon are constituted at this point, where they do not necessarily have the entire town council as part of the committee, but that the DITF can be its own committee, maybe with a member or two from the town council. And obviously, this would be a discussion and decision ultimately by the town council. But I would like to have us discuss it as a DITF issue in preparation for a presentation to the town council.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I
Make sure
think-
we can't discuss this, but
but we can discuss putting it on the agenda,
Yes.
and I would support putting it on the agenda.
yeah, I would too. I think that's a great idea. Is there anyone else who'd like to make an open public comment or something, or comment on something not on tonight's agenda? Is there anybody online who'd like to make a comment?
Seeing none.
I will close that comment period. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. So we can hang out for 40 minutes as a group if we'd like. And talk about how Annette was voting us off the island.